Hey there! So last time we looked at generating an array of random strings, and last time around we used Ruby. So after doing this, I got to thinking, I wonder how I would go about approaching this problem in Elixir. So today I thought we would kind of repeat the same project, but do so in Elixir. So the pieces are going to be the same as last time. We're going to generate a random string, length 1 to 10, alphanumeric only, and then we're going to want to be able to generate an array of those random strings and be able to pass in a length or a count for the number of strings that we want. And I'm going to be kind of breezing through the logical thinking behind this, so if you haven't seen the previous episode, please check out the show notes below and I'll put a link in there. Alright, let's go. So to get started, let's go into an IEX session and start thinking about how we're going to generate our array of characters that we're going to randomly select from. In Ruby, we were able to do a range from one string to another, but in Elixir, it expects these two values in the range to be integers. Now, I happen to know that Erlang handles lists of integers, kind of like strings, and so we can check what integer value maps to what string by putting a number inside of a list. And off the top of my head, I thought that the 60s range were in the printable character range in ASCII, and so I tried this, and sure enough, I get back a C. And this means that 65 would be A, and if we go back one more, we get some special characters. So if we jump back 10 characters, we should be in the numeric range. Sure enough, we're at 6, and if we jump back from there, we can get to 0 at 48. So as it turns out, our printable range from last time is 48 to 122, but as I started poking around a little bit more, I found that in Elixir you can also use this question mark character syntax, except here it returns the integer for that character value. So we can again use this question mark syntax here for our purposes and make our code a little more readable by doing question mark 0 to question mark lowercase c to get our range. But we're obviously not done here because we've got a range of integers and we want a range of strings. So to take care of this, let's iterate over our range here and map each integer value to a string. To do this, we'll want to use the enummap function, and we can pass our range in and then define a function that converts each n to string. And to test this out, let's join this to make it a string. That's not quite what we wanted. Instead, we're going to want to wrap our number in square brackets to get it to treat the integer like that string value that we saw earlier. And there we've got our character range that we want, except that we've got some special characters mixed in there like we did last time. So once again, we can filter this using a regular expression by taking our array of characters and passing it along through a pipeline to enum filter, which works just like select in Ruby, returning only items that are truthy for the function that we pass. So for each character in the list, we are going to do a regular expression match of the regular expression for a word character, for the character, and let's see what that gets us. And let's pass this along to enum join to see the string. And there we have it. We've got all the alphanumeric characters and that underscore that I'm okay with as well. So now that we've got our characters that we want, let's continue this pipeline for a moment and generate a random string inline here real quick. So at this point in the pipeline, we've got a list of characters like we want, and so now we are going to need them in a random order. For this, we can use enum shuffle to shuffle the order, and then after we have them shuffled, we will need to select a certain number of them, for which we can use enum take and then specify the number that we want to take, and this works as we want. But we're also going to want to have different size strings. So for this, for right now, we're going to use the Erlang random atom and call uniform on it. And this we can pass an integer value. So if we pass 10, it will give us back something of a random number from 1 to 10, which is exactly what we want. And here we see we get back our random list of strings, and we can finish things off here by doing enum join to make the list into a string. So now that we've got this working, let's take our entire solution here and write it out to a file. Random string.exs, close out my ex, open it up, and fix the formatting here real quick. And we'll need to add our backslash in that we lost here. So we save this, and if we jump back to the shell and run it with Elixir, we get nothing because we need to output this. Run it again, we get back a random string, but if we run it a second time, we get the exact same random string. Now, the reason for this is that this random uniform call here apparently doesn't seed the random string generator with a new value. So whenever we first start executing this logic, it will start from the same random value and proceed through the same series of random values. This is different than Ruby's rand function, and I'm not precisely sure how to do this correctly in Elixir, but this works for our purposes here, even though it's predictably random. So now that our code works, let's move all of this into its own module so that we can call random string and output that and get the same result that we just saw in the shell. So first we're going to want to define a module named random, and then inside of that we are going to want to define a function named string, and inside of that we are going to want to put all of our logic from before. And with this, we should be able to rerun our code and get a predictably random string again. So this cleanly generates our random string, but our goal is to get an array of random strings back. So we'll eventually want to implement this random strings functionality. But before we move on to that, let's take a look at our string function so far and kind of break this apart the way that we did last time to kind of refactor out some of the logic that doesn't need repeated. So in this portion, this is where the actual random string generation is taking place, the shuffle, take, and join. This part right here is just creating the list of characters that we're using, which we can put somewhere else and just reference at the top here every time we call this string method. So in Elixir, a place that we could put this is in a module attribute, and let's call it chars list. And you can assign a attribute by passing a value to it, basically. And this looks kind of sloppy, so I'm going to do this backslash thing here and assign it that way. And underneath, we can put chars list in here and pipe it down to shuffle. And if we rerun our logic, we get the same output. And while we're moving stuff around, it's worth noting that, again, this function syntax can be abbreviated to using the shorthand ampersand, and we can trim things down here a little bit by using that for both of these. This isn't necessarily better or worse, it's just really a matter of preference. So now that we've got this cleaned up, let's go ahead and call our strings method down here and implement it up here. We're also going to want to be able to ask for a certain number of strings, so let's do that here. Now, coming from Ruby myself, I want to do something like count.times here, or array.new and pass the value like we saw last time, but in Elixir I couldn't find anything quite like this. So the implementation I came up with is instead just doing an enum map over 1 to count, and here we do want the 1 base index because in the case of passing the 3 here, this will give us 1, 2, 3, 3 strings, which is what we want. And then we'll need to pass a function to map over these, which we are going to really ignore the numbers that we're passing along. We just are using the range to get the number of strings that we want. And then inside of here, calling random string, which returns that value to the map. So let's see if this works. Believe it or not, things are actually working here. We just need to change our puts to inspect, as the puts will convert the list to a string and then output it. The inspect will kind of give us a programmer-friendly view of what the object is. And there you have it. So this completes the project, but this line bothered me when I finished earlier, and I wanted to kind of shrink things down. The part that was bothering me is this anonymous function, where we're calling a function inside of it and returning it, and just kind of arbitrarily wrapping it in this function, when we really should just be able to pass this ranString function to the enum map call itself. And we can do this by appending an ampersand and doing /arity 0 here, because we're not passing any arguments. The string function doesn't take any arguments. And this will pass the random string function along to the enum map call to be executed for each iteration. If you're familiar with Ruby, this is perhaps something similar to doing the dot method call and passing the symbol string along to kind of detach the method and pass it along. So if we run this, it doesn't work because random string arity 0 called with 1 argument, and that's because we're doing a map call, and the map will pass this integer along into this function for each iteration. So what we need here is a random string with arity 1, that is to say a random string method that accepts 1 argument, and so we can define that up here as string and then take 1 argument but set it as an underscore to tell Elixir that we want to ignore it, and then inside here just call string and return the result. And we're back to getting our list of random strings. And actually, writing this through a second time, I think we can tighten this up just a little bit more. So to be able to test this, let's make sure that we can still generate a random string with an arity 0, and that random strings works, which is of course the one that uses random string arity 1. So in looking at this, I was reminded of something I learned at ElixirConf, which is that the way that the default parameters are implemented is that they actually define 2 separate functions. One arity 0, where the default argument is kind of defined as a variable within the function, I believe, and the other where it takes the argument. So we can leverage that here and still ignore any variable that's passed in and take a default value of nil. So this ignores it either way, but under the hood it implements it as string arity 0 and string arity 1. So if we save this and rerun it, sure enough, we get our random string and then our array of random strings. I can't say that this is necessarily a good idea, as it completely obfuscates our intentions here, but once again, it is interesting to note that it's possible. Well, that does it for today. I hope you found today's episode interesting. If you have any questions or episode requests, please feel free to comment below or tweet at me at Forkabomb. And if you'd like to download any episodes or support the show, please feel free to visit the Gumroad link in the show notes below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.